Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle Ellicott. Welcome back to another episode of VCTV. We are talking about the metaverse today. We are going virtual and we're getting a little augmented. We're mixing realities, we're blending what is digital and what is physical. There is so much happening in the space and so much to talk about. We're starting to see more applications both in the consumer side and the enterprise. We're starting to see new business models, which once were talked about as direct to consumer and now direct to avatar. As we live, and we've talked about in previous episodes here on VCTV, we are now living our lives more digitally than ever. In some cases, more than we even realize. And with that, we have both our physical selves and our digital selves. I know this might sound a little crazy for those that may be tuning in for the first time, but there is actual reality to what I'm stating. There's so much happening in these spaces and how it's going to apply not just to us as individuals, but to the world of business you need to know and understand. So we're going to be talking about that and breaking it down. And here in 2020 and Q3 specifically, there's a lot more activity than ever. And we're looking at more virtual or digital experiences. We're looking at how telemedicine or telepresence can be wrapped in and applied with leveraging these technologies. And we're looking at the next year plus, so next 1, 5, and 10 years ahead at where these technologies will play a role. And again, both our lives and in the enterprise as well. So we've been working and talking with some of the best and the brightest in the industry from around the world who are investing and building in this space. We wanted to bring them here on VCTV to share with you their thoughts and insights. So audience, tuning in for the first time, get your notebooks ready, get your ears open, and get ready to listen. If anytime you have any questions, comments, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll do our best to ask them in real time. And also, if you'd like to be on a show like today, like our guests, as investors, do reach out. We'd love to find the right spot for you. And entrepreneurs, this is not just a stage for investors. This is a stage for you. If you'd like the chance to come up on the virtual stage and pitch us your company, your project, we'd love to have you along with pitching to our entire live audience as well. Do reach out to the LA Token team, Elena and or myself, and we'll find the right spot for you. And also big thank you to Elena and to the entire LA Token team for always making VCTV possible on your screen, your device, anywhere in the world. With that being said, I'm Kyle Ellicott, your host. Let's dive in. Let's jump into the metaverse, into the oasis, into the virtual world, however you want to describe it. We are going there today. And let's start talking about augmented and virtual realities and what those are going to mean for us as both investors and entrepreneurs. And with that, Elga, apologies. I totally botched that. I apologize for that. Helga, welcome to the show for the first time. Terrible intro on my part, but I will get better. Little intro, little background on yourself for our audience.
Okay, hi, I'm Helga, but the Russian version is Olga, so it's originally the same name, so no biggie. I'm a founding partner at Crowberry Capital. We are a early stage VC fund based in Reykjavik, and we invest across the Nordics. So we have investments in Denmark, Finland, Sweden, and Iceland. We're looking for a Norwegian investment. So if there are any Norwegian VR experts out there, we'd love to meet you. We've done a couple of investments in VR. I'm personally very excited about VR, and like most people my age, I've been excited about VR since the early 90s. Yet to do an AR investment. The portfolio company that we currently have and is doing very well is a game called Waltz of the Wizard, and it's a built for Quest game and a built for Vive as well, but on Sony. But what's interesting about them is that they were the most played game on Steam VR game and are now doing very well on Quest, and they build a lot of tools and technology to help you accelerate the build of a VR experience. So that's sort of my story, and I've been in VC for 10 years and been working with startups for the last 20 years and love VR.
It's an exciting time to be in the space. I mean, we've been talking about the idea of virtual reality and augmented reality for decades in some cases, and really over the last decade, there's been a lot of promises made around where this technology would go. And some of the roadblocks that we'll be talking about is developing and also the application and then the adoption as well. And it sounds like you've got a great amount of experience. So we'll be coming back to you on that in just a little bit. But Lewis, welcome back to the show. We saw you yesterday. It's great to have you back here as well. Little intro, little background for those that might not know you.
Oh, I'm going to do better today, Kyle. And I want to thank you and Elena for having me on. To give you the skinny on myself, I've been involved in finance for over 25 years. And I've been involved in technology and in finance, anything, everywhere from investment banking to private equity. Been doing it. I've been involved in technology since I'm a kid. I love it. And in the core of everything, I'm an entrepreneur. So we're always looking for those unique situations, those innovative companies that are going to do something next level, that are looking to change the world. And that's what technology is about. It's about changing the world. And we love innovation. And this is why one of the companies that we went head first into was Megahoot, and they're involved in artificial intelligence, and also blockchain technology and machine learning and things like that. These are the things that are going to change the world. And when you're talking about virtual reality and you're talking about augmented reality, these things are going to be components in a lot of industries. And I don't want to take too much time right now, but we'll go through it during the show.
I love it. And it's okay. I mean, you've got a ton to talk about. I know we had this with the episode the other day. There's just so much knowledge that you're ready to share. So don't hold back today. We got plenty of time.
Okay.
With that being said, Dave, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you. Little intro, little background.
Great, thanks. Glad to be back. So I'm Dave Edwards. I'm located in Bend, Oregon, which is a nice place to be. Have to be isolated because we're up in the mountains. I am a co-founder of Saunders Studio. We're a venture studio, which means we get our roll up our sleeves and do lots of work for our portfolio companies. We're ranging across a whole wide range of industries. Primary focus is in AI and all of its applications, including AR and VR. Let's see, my background before that, I spent a bunch of time in finance and in venture capital, a couple of major venture firms, did a lot of product work at Apple and other software companies. And we bring all that to bear to help build startups. We're currently working with doing a project right now that's using AR in the sports industry, which is really quite interesting. And we've done a bunch of work over the last couple of years with companies ranging across education and real estate and a whole bunch of things in the virtual worlds, which has been interesting to look at and try and figure out where we feel confident enough to actually do something with. So excited to be a part of the conversation today. Thanks for having me back.
Awesome, wonderful. And last but not least, Mr. Gary Fowler. Welcome back. I'll just give a little dramatic pause for you. I won't throw much more out there than that, but.
Okay, good. I don't know what to expect from you. Every day it's a little bit, I feel like Forrest Gump, every day is a box of chocolates. So my name's Gary Fowler and I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been doing startups for over 35 years. And I've worked on 2 unicorns. I was on the original management team at Click Software, sold a year ago for $1.35 billion. Yva, which is my company I founded 4.5 years ago, is near unicorn status right now. It's an AI company also. One of the Russian billionaires is my partner in that company, located out in California. So I've had a diverse background. I've done 15 companies. I actually went back to school in my 40s in Russia. I went to Moscow State University for 5 years in a graduate program, got divorced, and I said, what would be really cool? Well, if you could dream of what you wanted to do, it would be go back to graduate school. So I went back. So I was also an MIT Skolkovo professor at the top business school. And I love AI. I'm a clinical psychologist that I studied in graduate school before Russia, clinical psychology. So I really think that that's really where the future is. And as I've said many times, it's a new electricity. I also have a venture studio. We focus on AI companies from around the world. Obviously having the Russian, Ukrainian, Belarusian, Eastern European connections really helps us out a lot. And we're looking for those top companies. We are investors, but we do a little bit differently than most of the venture studios. We directly take operational roles. Many times I'll take CEO role, sometimes chairman role. My partner, Derek, will take COO. And then we'll bring in top folks. So if it's a retail company, the former COO of Walmart, for instance. So we stack the deck and we look for growth stage companies.
I love it. We've got a great panel, guys. I mean, audience, if you're tuning in for the first time, again, get your notebooks ready. This is going to be an exciting episode. And with that, guys, I want to talk about very first what the current state of AR and VR is. You know, we're starting to see the word metaverse, as I teased out in the beginning, used more often. We're starting to see AR and virtual experiences being talked about more in headlines and news. We're seeing the rise of virtual experiences. And I don't mean just via Zoom, but actually seeing these new virtualized experiences where we're going into games, we're going into various applications and seeing concerts, seeing conferences and other things in ways that have been teased about or just seen in entertainment and now are starting to be here in their early days. But what is all happening beyond that? I mean, what are you seeing as the current state of both AR and VR? Helga, I want to start with you as our new guest for the show today. We'd love to hear your opinion on the current state of AR, VR.
Well, as I said earlier, I'm very excited about AR and VR, but I think, you know, I think what will be really exciting is the combination of 5G and VR and AR, because because I mean, the friction in both technologies is like this hardware that you have to use. And I think once we have 5G and we can maybe remove the computer from the headsets and things like that, I think it will be much, you know, we'll get more wearables, better glasses, and I think there is a certain utility to that. So my thinking is that with 5G and when that becomes prominent, I think that will help the development of the headsets, which again will sort of lead to mass markets. I think already with like Quest being sort of I mean, it's been interesting to see how well Quest has taken off. It'll also be interesting to see and I'm interested to hear what my co-panelists have to say about sort of what Apple is going to do. I'm sure they'll make something beautiful in terms of VR and AR, but I think it's the hardware is the friction at this point. And when we make that as frictionless as possible, I think that will, because I think there are a lot of people that are capable of making great content, and it has a lot of multi-purpose content is what I'm looking for. So,
yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the headsets, we've seen a number of them past 5 years. We could probably all name drop about 10 different ones that may or may not still exist today, and that's okay. I mean, it is a big barrier to entry because it is such an important component to enter a virtual world. You need that hardware component. So Dave, I'll come to you next. What are you seeing as the current state of AR, VR from your viewpoint?
Yeah, I think there's three things that I'm focused on. First is the platform evolution, and I'm more focused on the AR side, just based on what we're working on. We're building a business now that's in the sports industry that's going to be heavily based on ARKit. And what Apple has embedded inside the software is really allowing us to do some things that you just couldn't have done before, or at least couldn't have done without a huge expense. So that's a really encouraging sign. Sort of keep watching the VR platforms, but they continue to be, you know, challenging for all the reasons we know. The second for me is the focus for me is on the embedding that sort of what the AI inside is, and whether that's analyzing what's happening on the screen or what the camera's seeing, or more advanced things like we started to look into a project that's going on in the education space, which is using emotional intelligence to understand how students are reacting to teachers. And you can see how that can borrow from companies, everything from Affectiva to Soul Machines, and this kind of understanding emotional intelligence or emotional AI. The third thing that I'm really interested in is changes in business models. And some of them seem really interesting. And then it reminds me of crypto, where you're like, wow, that's really cool. The technology can do that, but I don't think that actually is going to work. So, you know, there's lots of that happening. But we started to get involved in a project that's looking at using sort of real estate value in the metaverse. And you can see how that can actually work, because there's a lot that is actually required to build place in a virtual world. And so someone who can actually build that place for businesses that don't want to be in the place building business, there's an interesting business model there. And so that's really interesting. So you still have to blend all those things together. You have to be, in their particular case, you have to be excited to be in Second Life. But there still is there's a really interesting new business model possibility there. So those are the three things: platform changes, AI inside, and business models.
Yeah, I mean, and we're going to come back to business models. Like I said in the beginning, too, direct to avatar is now a rising business model, and what that means and how that's going to apply, because there is a very large number potential market size there that's already existing today. And we're talking hundreds of billions currently looking at the next 4 years ahead. That I'm sure is going to double, triple, quadruple in the next year. So we'll come back to that as well. Lewis, to you, what are you seeing as the current state of AR VR?
I have to unmute first. I remembered from yesterday. But yeah, look, I think they've made a lot of good points as far as AR and VR. I think, again, that's part of the future. This is going to be the future of everything. You talk about IoT. This is all part of it. And Helga made good points on 5G, and a lot of this speed is going to allow us to create more things. Like even what we're on right now. 10 years ago, it would be difficult for us to do this. It wasn't there. Now you have WebRTC and everything else. You're able to actually do it. The higher speed, you're able to have these conferences. We're involved in artificial intelligence, and I liked what Dave had to say in regards to utilizing that to detect emotions. We have something that we're doing with schools, and we're implementing a whole suite of things for schools in the scope of social distance monitoring and mass detection, emotion detection, so on and so forth. And I think that all of this is going to continue to grow. As far as AR is concerned, look, you have industries, whether it be manufacturing, so on, finance. You can utilize augmented reality to help to teach people. Schools, you can have a virtual teacher, you can do this stuff, and you have some really smart people that are actually looking to make this happen. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I try to connect with smart people like yourself, Kyle, and Dave, and Gary, and Helga, and everyone else on the panel. But I think we're just scraping the surface at this point. I think there's a lot more to go.
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
Absolutely. And Gary, to you, I mean, continuing on that, there's a lot more to go. Talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing in these industries right now.
Well, we do a lot with stadiums. We have a security company. So I have a lot of interaction with stadiums from around the world: entertainment, NBA, football, FIFA, those kind of things. And I mean, think about it. There's opportunities. Those people need to figure out how they can increase their revenue. How can they use VR, AR, and XR? What are they going to do? This whole digital transformation we've had, Dave and Helga and Lewis have mentioned that, for education, I mean, we've got, kind of one-sided educational experience. I saw a video yesterday of a kid that was in front of this TV monitor, this monitor on his computer, an old computer, and bored to death. Bored. I mean, it's one thing about being in a classroom. So we better make some immersive experiences. And we're in a very interesting times. We've got another year and a half journey. And so we need to adapt. I think it's a greatest time because it forces us to use those technologies now instead of waiting. Well, I don't know. Should we try it? It's like vaccines, right? They're coming out. You better get on board. So one thing that was mentioned is the pipeline, the 5G pipeline. That really changes things because now we can get the data. I mean, that takes us to be able to do streaming, right? So what is it? Apple's new, was it 8K that's coming out? The new goggles that they have. It's happening now. There's a convergence. So AI's there, the technology's there to be able to support it, and the environment is currently fertile because of the current situation with the pandemic. So, and it was going to happen anyhow through the digital transformation. It's just happened a lot faster. So obviously AI is a critical part of this, and now people are willing to use it to make their lives better. They know that they have to use it if they want to study, right? If you're at Stanford you're at Penn State University, wherever you are, Harvard, Helga, you need to be able to study. And how do you do it today? Well, the world has changed. Let's make it immersive and let's jump on these incredible opportunities.
Yeah,
absolutely. Go ahead, El. Go ahead.
Just appreciating what you were saying about education and how you can use AR and VR for education. And I'm actually mindful of all the people that are starting new schools this year, all doing it digitally. And I wish that because it's not just about the education, it's also about your social interactions and how you interact with your peers. And I would wish that there was some tool out there, maybe it is, which can help young people. Imagine starting university in 2020 and you're online, you don't meet your fellow students. If there was like a VR campus experience or something like that. So I think, and I think that would be transformative. So
yeah, and we've started seeing that on the conference space, right? We've started to do these conferences and again, a virtual experience, limited, but growing, where it's not just on Zoom or on other technologies as well, but it's a little bit more virtualized.
With an avatar, and you were really sort of on campus in a room. I think.
Yeah. So sorry, there's a delay on my side. Apologies, Helga, for interrupting. But with that being said, let's talk about applications. Let's talk about where this technology is really being applied today. So you mentioned education. Where else are you seeing AR, VR being applied in the world today, whether that's on the consumer side or enterprise side? Not being talked about, but actually being applied. Helga, we'll start with you.
Well, what I know that there are several sort of manufacturing companies here in Iceland, and I know because of COVID, they haven't been able to travel to set up their machinery and things like that, and they make very high-tech machinery that they're selling all over the world. So they've actually developed VR tools to help their customers set up their machinery. So I think that is a real-life application that's helping us through this crisis, but once the crisis is over, they're going to continue doing this virtually and through VR and AR rather than on site. So I think that's going to save them travel costs in the future. And it sounds like they're very, very happy with using this type of application.
Lewis, to you, where are you seeing the technologies of AR and VR applied in addition to manufacturing or that telepresence type solution in application?
Well, what I think, I'm gonna, Helga, you had it on point. Gary had it on point. Dave, everyone's on point. Augmented reality is being utilized now, even to help a medical student, to become a doctor. They're doing things virtually. I've seen this in Georgia when they were teaching kids science and they were utilizing augmented reality and in industries, you can, in finance, education, smart cities. You have smart cities that are starting to pop up. All this stuff, the VR, the AR, all this stuff is going to be integrated into our lives. A long time ago, a little box came out. It was called a television. They said it was a fad, but it was a future, and everything just continues to progress. And we're all about the future. That's why we have the Elon Musk of the world, and we have guys like that are dreamers and they want to do more. And I think everyone here feels the same way, whether you're an investor or whether you are an entrepreneur. You're looking at the future. I know Gary likes the future, so we'll pass this over to him. But again, a lot of applications for AR and VR, and we're just scraping the surface on this one.
Absolutely, Gary, you've been teed up, so I'm coming to you next. Where are you seeing this technology being applied in the real world?
Yeah, look at it. So, healthcare, AR, VR, can you? Hello?
Yep, you're cutting in and out, but we can still hear you. Yep. Oh, looks like you might have gone on mute. So we'll give you a second.
Yeah. So from a healthcare.
Go ahead.
It's on. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah,
yep.
I had it on. It was on. Not. By the way, I just wrote Eric from.
Oh, all right. So we lost Gary. We'll bring him back here in just a minute. Dave, let's switch over to you. So where else are you seeing the technology being applied? Right. We've talked about education. We've talked a little bit about manufacturing. Where are you seeing this, and along with medical, where are you seeing the technology being applied today?
Yeah, well, I'll throw out sports just because that's what I'm spending so much of my day on today, day to day with this project that we're building. So if you look at companies ranging from look at Home Court, which is a basketball training app, where the app you put the phone down and you watch, and the app watches you shoot and tries to help you make the perfect shot. It can do things like count how many times you've made a basket versus not. It's a really quite interesting and sophisticated app. It's very popular, and they've done a great job of integrating AR technology in with live stars. So Steve Nash is in there coaching you, which is kind of cool since now he just took the job as the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. So that's really cool. There's use where they've got apps that'll do the same thing. We're analyzing your yoga moves. So to help you coach you into like the right position, which is a pretty, important thing. And especially if you like to practice yoga on your own, plenty of people do. This is a way to use AR to analyze the body shape, using either stuff that's embedded inside the iOS, or they're building their own technology. Different ones are taking different paths technically, but these things are all a way to actually analyze a human body, compare that against some sort of optimized movement, and then be able to provide feedback. I think that's a really practical, sophisticated way of using the technology and providing a need for an individual. If you're a kid trying to figure out how to shoot, like you can sit and watch Steph Curry and then pretend to shoot like him, like my kids all did. Everybody wants to shoot like Steph, but that's all in your mind. It's different when somebody's watching you and actually helping you figure out what it means to actually shoot. And so that's a really wonderful way of taking a true user need and applying the technology to it. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges when you have these big technology breakthroughs, whether it's AR or VR or AI or any of the other ones we've talked about, is it's really tempting to say there's this really great thing and it can do this thing. And then you're making the classic product problem of using a technology and hunting for a solution, rather than looking at a user need and figuring out what part of the solution might apply to it. So I think when we look across the span, one of the key things to remember here is sometimes there's just a little bit of AR in a solution, and that's just as dramatic and awesome than if it is some huge virtual world, because it may actually solve a problem better than something else that was just created to be able to use the technology.
Absolutely. We talked about this on a previous episode earlier today around blockchain, and how very similar to AI as well, as you don't necessarily need to apply it in its mass entirety, that there's pieces of those technologies that you can apply. And even with AR, VR, you're calling it out perfectly. Like there's small snippets that can be hugely impactful and solve those problems, versus having to build out, which by the way is not easy and not cheap either, an entire virtual world. And getting someone to adopt into that is still a challenge. There's still a little bit of a lag of people jumping into full virtual worlds versus the experiences, to your point, are solving problems.
If I could drop one quick thing on that virtual world thing that you mentioned, we're having all of these conversations and conferences and things virtually. One of the through Zoom, right, and video conferencing. One of the things I think it's important that I've really come to embrace over the last year or so in virtual worlds is the change in the human dynamic of being able to be an avatar. That used to be something 20 years ago or whatever, when some platforms like Second Life were just starting. It was kind of odd, and I couldn't quite get my head around it. Like, why would I want to be an avatar? And because it just didn't click for me. It clicked for lots of people that I know who work there and love it, but it wasn't a thing for me. Now I realize there's so much Zoom fatigue, because not only are we sitting watching other people, but we're being watched, and we're watching ourselves. Like, I'm right there on the screen. I can see myself, and that's tiring after so many hours. It's really different when you're able to create an avatar and be you, and be able to sit in a space, whether you're doing something with goggles or not, where you're able to actually not be thinking about yourself and is your hair okay and your glasses look funny or whatever else. There is something that allows you to kind of step back and have a different kind of personal experience. I haven't figured out how to go run with that yet, but I think there is something that really does solve a human need, which is there's times when we want to be personal and we want to be on stage and we want to have those kinds of interactions, and then there's times when we don't. And so how can we use a virtual world to provide interaction without it being so stressful emotionally.
You're bringing up a great point, and I think, in my opinion, I want to hear everyone else's too. We're working into that. We're building into that process, right? I think you're starting to see the separation of the physical and digital identities, as I'll refer to it as. Is you've got your physical identity, of which is something that you're interacting with people individually or short connections, and then you have that digital identity that does a lot more online, right? So I talked to you about the direct to avatar model around businesses, that you've got the products that we buy online, physical goods, and then we've got those that we're going to buy digitally for our avatar, and how we want to represent ourselves and how we want to be seen digitally as well. And I think you're bringing up a very good point. And Lewis, Helga, I would love to hear your thoughts around this. Is like, where are we in that process? Are we really early days? Are we starting to get that adoption, or where do you see us moving into those digital avatars?
I think it's
Lewis, we'll start with
evolving.
you.
I think it's evolving because, Dave brought up a couple of good points as far as with AI and learning how to shoot basketballs. You're learning how to shoot hoops, okay? You can actually go, and they've done it to teach people how to play golf. Okay, there are a lot of things that are going to be happening in that space, and this is not Ready Player One yet. All right, we will get to that point, but there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance, where you can have your virtual and your real reality, and your virtual. There's at some point in time that's going to cross over, and it's with 5G. I mean, it's just going to allow all this stuff to happen faster. Okay, I know Dave doesn't like watching myself. I don't mind. We'll do this stuff, but this is about sharing information and connecting, and granted, with the the full virtual on virtual world, we're not going to be there for a bit. We're not going to be there for a bit. I don't want to take up too much time. I'll pass the ball over to Gary. I know he's itching. He's ready to go. We can get him back in the game.
Gary, real quick. So the question, just in case you didn't hear it, is we're talking about
Hey, Kyle, by the way, my Zoom died. That's why I got knocked off.
Well, I had a similar problem myself earlier today, so I know what you went through, and I'm glad you're back. We're talking a little bit about the idea of avatars and how we're progressing into these and looking at them not only as our digital selves, but we're starting to see the value in them as we get fatigued, and we look towards the difference between our physical and our digital selves. Where do you see us in that process? Are we moving towards that sooner? Later, where do you see us moving towards the idea of a digital avatar?
Well, I mean, it's happening now, right? Because what's the next extension of Zoom? The Zoom's going to be you're in a conference room, sitting in a conference room, really having conversations, right? So, I mean, it's going to happen, and that's the next extension of this experience. So, is it going to happen? Yes. Is it going to happen sooner than later? Absolutely. Is it going to be a depiction of who we are? Probably, right? I mean, look at it. I've got a virtual background on the back of my Zoom now. It's already started. We're in the process. So yes, and sooner than later.
Helga, to you, same question.
Yeah, I think it's also I was just thinking while I was listening, because I think everybody made really good points about who we are and where we are, and do we all just want to be sort of talking heads for the rest of our lives in little boxes. So I think it's also a question of identity. So I think, we're used to meeting people in the world, and you judge people's identity from what they wear, where they are, where they choose to eat, who they surround themselves with. And we've all lost a little bit of our identity on these 6 months of Zoom. We're just kind of in boxes. We don't, we could all be sitting here in our underpants for all we know. We could, we don't see the full identity, and like seeing someone and like a blank wall, and you learn less about them. And I think one of the things that I really miss on Zoom is just getting to know people and what they're interested in. And you always get to the point, you don't have the casual conversations, and you don't, understand where they want to eat, or do you meet them in a library, or do you meet them in their office or in a cafe? So I think, I think even in a virtual world, if we sort of had avatars, we can maybe present our identity more clearly than we can in this sort of hybrid Zoom world where we're living at the moment.
Absolutely. And that takes me to one of my big questions here as we reach the lightning round, and that's the areas of opportunity. where are the opportunities in the metaverse that people should be paying attention to, either investing and or building towards for not just the next year ahead, but this is a long game. Let's talk about the next 5-10 years. So where should people be laying those bets around the metaverse and what's to come? And Gary, we're going to start with you, and then we'll come all the way around before closing thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we didn't talk about shopping, right? But it's a great opportunity. Think about it today. We've got these kind of bland, Amazon shopping experiences. We're ordering stuff online, but it's not really, we're not walking through the store. I think it's a really interesting opportunity. We mentioned education. Of course, education is upon us, and we need to grab it. This is the time. If you're going to have a company and you want to get out very quickly, the demand is there. Let's get it. Let's get those immersive technologies so we can enhance the education experience. I mean, it's literally across the board, right? So if you look at medicine and healthcare, so the opportunity is huge. I mean, think about all the AR, VR opportunities there today. So what I think is the real convergence, now that we've, as I said, the 5G, we've got artificial intelligence at the right level and the technology to support it. The pipe's there, technology, and now AI is at the right kind of level to be able to integrate it. I think this is a perfect time. So look at where those three meet. That's where the opportunities will be.
Lewis, to you.
I had to unmute first. Okay. But yeah, look, there's a lot of opportunity out there. I think from my experience is that if you don't see it, then you create it. If you're an entrepreneur and that is what you have inside of you, you're going to create the solutions. You see the problem, you don't focus on the problem, you create the solutions and make things happen. With 5G, it's going to change the scope of everything. You have telemedicine, people are speaking to doctors and everything remotely. The reality is that if you take a virtual reality type of situation and you incorporate it there, it makes that experience a little more. My fear with full on virtual reality is that people are going to become socially messed up. They're not going to know how to interact with people in the real world. Right now with Zoom and everything else, okay, it's hard. And you guys are right, it's hard to make that connection. Helga was saying, you can speak and you can do all this stuff, but there's that human connection and you miss it. So VR may bring that to us, but I think it's gonna have to balance out. You can't just go all in and that's it. We do some of that. With Megahoot, we're involved in AI and we're doing things in that realm, and we're looking to help to change things. And I do encourage more entrepreneurs to come up, step up, be innovative. Be disruptive, do different things. Don't follow the leader. Don't try to be the next Facebook or next this. Do something else. Change the world, and this is what you got to do. And if you're listening to this, just take that to heart. Trust me, it's going to pay off.
Absolutely. Dave, to you.
Yeah, I'd say two opportunities in addition to the ones that I've already talked about. One is sort of this concept of data visualization, of layering data onto the real world, whether that's presentation of data in a media article, or whether that's something that you can experience walking around. We still are very much at the beginning of blending those things and being able to bring all of the knowledge that we've collected on the internet into our daily life, physical life, in real life. So that I think is a really interesting opportunity. The other is really blending this concept of virtual world and a little bit of sheltered space in the virtual world with emotional AI. And I'm thinking in particular for Gen Z, which I witnessed through all my kids. And we actually ran a summer camp for kids to teach them about AI and product design and product development. And some of the best ideas that these kids came up with were all around using AI to help with their own emotional well-being and reducing stress and reducing especially the stress of digital life. So that's kind of a wide open area, but I actually think that there's some things that we can do in the AR VR world plus emotional intelligence to be able to bring those together and create a better place. And I think that's it's one area that I think can be frequently overlooked, because a lot of people who are venture capitalists or entrepreneurs are natural extroverts and are happy to be out there. And then there's this huge category of people who are introverts and are really scared. And you see them getting crippled by digital life and being digitally native. And so perhaps there's a way to do something in that for that market.
Absolutely. Helga, to you.
Yeah, I think everybody's made a really good points about the future of AR, VR, and I especially appreciate the theme here that there will be a fusion of technology, that you're going to have, there's a lot of complementary things about AI and VR and AR and XR and things like that. So I think, you will see a lot of fusion of technology in the next 10 years, and we won't be talking about technologies. We will be talking about different applications or different experiences. And I would think that 10 years from now, or I'd hope that we would again, back to where I started with the frictionless hardware, that we will just have a pair of glasses very much like Dave's, and you can switch between AR, VR, XR, and your sunglasses. So I would imagine with 5G that all the headgear is going to get a lot lighter. So I would imagine, I don't know, I would hope 10 years from now that we would really have made a lot of progress in the hardware, which means that the applications will be ubiquitous. We can use, and it does, and also to Dave's point earlier, which I really appreciate, it doesn't have to be huge. You can have little bits of applications that are very helpful. So I think, and I think we will see it across industries and across experiences. That would be my hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we're coming to the top of the hour, I want to come to everyone for any quick closing thoughts, and then where can everyone find you as well to continue the conversation, because there is so much to continue to discuss around the future of this metaverse and where things are going to go from here, both blending of our physical and our digital world, and also some of the products and goods and sensors. Everything that we have in our lives today will come into that digitization. We'll go into that digital world in some way, shape, or form. So want to come to you. So Gary, let's start with you. Any quick closing thoughts, and then where can everyone find you online?
Yeah, so today's the time where we really need these technologies to give her a more, as Helga said, a more interactive experience. So it's a great time. And you can reach me, Gary Fowler, LinkedIn, or Gary@gsdvs.com. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you, Kyle.
Awesome. Dave, to you, same question.
I think this is a very exciting space, and I'm excited to connect with any entrepreneurs or investors who are interested in trying to find good products. That's our specialty, is figuring out how to make products that work and businesses that matter. You can find me at getsonder.com for Sonder Studio. Email is dave@getsonder.com, or on Twitter is dedwards93.
Wonderful. Lewis, to you as well.
Yeah, the exciting conversation today, and I think AR, VR, AI, all of this stuff is going to blend together, and you're going to have a lot of great companies, I think, emerging. This is why we went headfirst into Megahoot, because we see the future and how we can be a part of it. You can find me, you go to fjapartners.com. You can find out a little more about me. I do urge you to look at Megahoot and take a look at it and see the things that we're doing. And I appreciate Kyle, Elena, I appreciate you guys for doing this. It's a great platform, and I appreciate everyone that's on the show.
Thank you very much. And Helga, close us out. Where can everyone find you, and any closing thoughts?
Yeah, closing thought is, I hope that there's somebody in the audience developing something we haven't even foreseen. Because to Lewis's point earlier, it's do something different. So I'm sure it's difficult to predict the future, but there's somebody out there doing something amazing. And I can be reached at Crowberry Capital. So it's helga@crowberrycapital.com. And also like to thank my fellow panelists for a really interesting conversation. And Kyle, just amazing work that you're doing hosting this. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we're, again, so appreciative of all of your time and insights today. And to those tuning in, if you like what you heard, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Do reach out if you'd like to be on a show like today, whether you're an investor to share your thoughts or an entrepreneur to pitch us and share with us your project, your company, your idea. As we've all stated, we'd love to hear what is being built next. And so would the audience as well. And there's some great people out there that may want to connect further. And to each of our investors and panelists today, again, thank you for your time. Also, a big thank you to Elena and the entire LA Token team for making VCTV possible every single day on your screens, your devices, anywhere in the world. With that being said, I'm Kyle Ellicott, your host. Thank you, Gary. We'll be back here tomorrow with 2 more episodes of VCTV as we close out the week and get prepared for a busy further September. With that, I'm Kyle Ellicott. You can find me on all social media at Kyle